Hey, so I'm over 50 and I got laid off. It can happen to anyone. I never thought it would happen to me, like many of you probably felt the same way. After being a top performer in my industry for nearly 25 years, working at the same company for nearly 15 years, at the peak of my performance, literally had just been recognized as a peak performer winning a trip to Hawaii. It can happen to anybody, right? There's a lot of changes that are going on, not just in the economy, but within the world. And I'm hoping that this video helps someone else prepare themselves, not just for the realization they might have been let go, but to help prepare themselves, because I certainly did some things earlier in my life, back in my 20s and 30s, and it's never too late. I don't care if you're 40 or even if you're 50 years old or older. It's not too late to prepare for big life changes, but it is important that we all realize that it's possible. And over the 25 years in industry, I saw lots of peaks and valleys. I had been in a number of positions. My field was, or my specialty was primarily sales and marketing. I saw lots of people let go. I had to let go a lot of people. Being in a senior management position, unfortunately, I was faced with the realization that we might have needed to change the team dynamic, right? Typically it was the opening and closing of locations, and it might have been eliminating a position, but it happens, right? And people in leadership tend to have to make decisions that they probably otherwise wouldn't want to make. But sometimes it is, or at least it's perceived to be, the best thing for the business. One of the things I want to share today is to maybe help those people that may feel something's not quite right, to help prepare themselves and maybe prepare them to ask some questions of themselves and maybe some others to help prepare themselves for their future. Over the 25 years, I got pretty good at sniffing out changes in the industry. I dodged no less than 3 downsizings. Actually, it was probably many more than that. I'm probably not realizing the close calls that I've seen, but there's lots of things that you need to look out for. Changes in leadership are typically a big one. Not that new leaders are better or worse than the one that you most recently worked with. It's a facilitator of change. Oftentimes a new leader comes in. It might be the CEO. It may be your immediate leader. It may be your leader one level up, right? Or even further, that has recently changed. And when that happens, those new leaders typically have a new vision, right? They have maybe not so different, but there's a number of things that make that change happen. Maybe they want to bring on their own team. There's the old saying, to the victor goes the spoils, right? We see that in politics every 4 years here recently, where a new team comes in every time there's a leadership change, and sometimes you can be one of those folks that get caught up. So you need to be aware of that. The other big one for me that I've noticed is changes in culture. In a direct sales position in my past, I saw changes where the strategy had changed, where there was one set of skills that was needed, and then maybe one that wasn't quite the same, right? There might be someone else that does the same thing, but they go about it in a different way that is really being championed by this new culture. When those things happen, if you're like me, in this most recent, you think, you know what, I'm crushing it. I'm doing great. Who's not going to want to keep me, right? Who's not going to want me on their team? And a lot of times that's true, right? A lot of times, top performers do get saved first, right? But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's location based. And sometimes, let's get real, sometimes it's age based. And those things, I know I don't harbor any ill will. I'd like to think that I wouldn't do things the same way all the time, but it's easy for me as a leader to understand why certain decisions are made. Some other signs that you have to look out for are layoffs in other departments. And I know it's easy to think, oh, wow, Joe over in shipping got laid off, and that's terrible. It's just after Christmas. And it's going to be tough for the family. Well, those impacts tend to have ripple effects, coming from a person that's been in sales and sales leadership most of their life. To use this example, if there's an impact in shipping, you might think, well, if shipping's being impacted because we're not selling enough, right? So, they need me more than ever now because they're going to need me to sell more, and I'm a top performer, and they're going to want to make sure that I stay so I can help drive the bottom line. Well, that might be so, but one of the things that I've seen, and I think most of us have seen it here recently with the advancement of AI and people purchasing on the internet, that probably won't happen, right? There's lots of different ways to get the same thing done, not just if you're a salesperson, but it doesn't matter what you do. Maybe you're a software programmer and you just launched the biggest, best new game for your company, and you're thinking, wow, they're never going to get rid of me. They pay me gobs of money every year to do this. Why in the world would they ever get rid of me? Well, they might get rid of you because they pay you gobs of money every year, right? That it might be that simple. It might be the years of experience that you have in your field that might be procuring calls as to why you're selected. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But making sure that you're focusing in on those other departments. The first thing I would say there is be empathetic to those folks. I've seen it where when someone maybe misses a layoff, it's like, oh, wow, that really sucks. But in the back of their mind, it's like, man, I'm glad that wasn't me. And that's normal. I mean, we're all human in the end. We all want to win. We all want to take care of our own. We've got families. We've got a lifestyle that we've developed that we want to make sure that we maintain. And it's understandable to maybe rejoice a little bit when you have those near misses. But it's also very important to learn from them because it could very well be you, right? I've been in positions in marketing and things of that nature. And, those are positions, the advice that I would give those when you're thinking about what position you're in, the further you get from the front line, whether you are a sales professional selling to customers or end users, or maybe you are building something on an assembly line. Maybe you are shipping, something packages or some other freight. You're probably in the highest demand. Obviously, changes in the business can affect anyone's role. We see companies shut down all the time, right? And it's just tragic when we see large layoffs. But those are usually the most secure positions in my experience. Those leaders of those folks are typically also in pretty good spots. Not all companies in my experience have the same level of value for those folks. But I will say that those that top teams typically have top leadership, and top leadership is typically pretty highly valued. In particular, if you're bringing something to the team that others don't, and those folks typically are held on longer. That being said, you've also got to watch increases and decreases in team size. As a senior leader, I've been in the position of leading leaders and leading leaders. And, I've seen times where we've reduced the size of a sales team. And at first it's like, man, why are we doing this? I don't really understand why we would be doing this at this time. I mean, we're growing, we're doing better than ever. We're, one of the top ranked companies in our industry. It doesn't really seem to make sense when you start reducing someone's fear of leadership. And sometimes that's done to facilitate even more growth, right? It might be a situation where you are trying to focus more on the front line. Maybe there's a deficiency that we've seen. They need some more skill building. So as opposed to changing out leadership, they reduce the size of a leadership sphere. And, I've seen this probably more when companies combine and there's lots of hiring that takes place, in particular at the leadership level. And obviously to do that, it usually requires a lot of hiring at the frontline level. But when that happens, sometimes they'll reduce the size of a team just to help others catch up, right? Not every leader has the same level of skill, and it might take time to catch everyone up. But on the flip side of that is maybe we're not doing it because of all the growth. Maybe we're doing it because we recognize that, this leader that's been in a position for 5+ years, they do good, right? They're a top performer. They can manage teams effectively 10, 20% higher than someone that we just recently promoted. However, it might be cheaper to promote someone and give them the opportunity to lead a smaller team. You got to consider the financial impacts that has to a company. And sometimes it's cheaper to hire someone with less skill. And given that, if you're someone who has an abundance of skill, that they're paying more, maybe considerably more, they may not have as high of a value on what you contribute to the company anymore. And this is completely from firsthand experience. Quite frankly, there are programs out there, I won't name them here, but most of you would probably recognize them, that have those types of analytics built into them. How long have they worked here? When was the last time they were promoted? What's their performance level? How much do they make? How old are they, right? And they can do the math and say, hey, look, we don't need this guy anymore. He's great. He's an awesome performer. But he's only got 10, 15 years left. We've got people that have 30 years left that can do a good job, and we can nurture, right? And sometimes that's, for whatever reason, that's seen as beneficial to the company. So you need to look out for that. And one of the other things that I'd say that in the top 5 that I've seen is when there's financial changes, when especially as companies start growing, getting larger, sooner or later the bean counters get in there. And if you start noticing that they're worried about how much toilet paper you're ordering, or they're managing your overtime like it's never been done before, that's usually a sign that things are going to change. Is it going to impact someone's job? Maybe not. The best leaders make sure that never happens. They make sure you're not ordering too much toilet paper. They make sure that you're not using a bunch of overtime, even though no one has ever said anything about it when you do. But when there's an increased focus on finances, unfortunately, sooner or later, especially depending on how long that cycle lasts, unfortunately, that ends up meaning that there will be headcount changes, right? It may have nothing to do with someone's performance, but it can mean headcount changes. So those are probably my top 5 things that I look for when considering that changes might be coming. But there's some things that you can do about it, and some of these you probably do, and if you don't, I would encourage you to do that. And number 1 is something that I know I personally have struggled to do my entire life, and that's recognize your own wins. Hopefully you're in a position where you get annual reviews, at least, right? And during those reviews, sometimes they can be very one-sided conversations. At better companies with better leaders, they tend to be more two-way. And I would encourage you to don't just show up for those moments and expect them to tell you how you're doing, because in the end, what you're really looking for is you just want to know what your increase is going to be, right? If you're going to get one, right? And that's natural. But if you want to play the game, make sure you prepare. Make sure that you know what your performance was for the last quarter or the last year, whatever's being reviewed. Make sure that you're acknowledging the things that you've done to help the company win, help the team win, and maybe even help that leader win. Sometimes those things aren't necessarily recognized and might not be captured in your review, but it gives you the opportunity, 1, to represent yourself, and 2, it gives you the opportunity to make sure that maybe those things can get captured on your review. A lot of companies use, again, programs that they have to go back and they have to capture the conversations once those are taken, right? And it's to your benefit if those wins are captured. Don't rely on the individual that's reviewing you to do that. Please don't do that. The next is keep your resume updated. I've not worked for a lot of companies in my life, but most I've worked for at a minimum of 5 years. And when you get kind of comfortable in a position, and in particular, from my own experience, when you're performing very well, and maybe you like your job, you don't want to move up, you don't want to move to a different team, you're not necessarily looking to improve your skills, maybe. But it's important for you to keep your resume updated. It's very easy to forget the details when you get what I would say unconsciously competent at your job, and you do well, and you may not even realize why you're you may not even realize how you do well anymore. It might be so unconscious that things just happen when you walk into the room, when you step onto the floor, when you walk up to the line. Things may just happen, and you may outperform everyone around you. But take the opportunity, and the last one is kind of included in this is, as you capture your wins, make sure that you document those, keep them in a place where you can recall them, and ideally, you take the opportunity to add those to your resume. And we'll talk later on about some things that you can do in respect to a resume. I know that a lot of you are thinking, well, you know what, if I do that, my resume is going to be 5,000 pages long. What I'm going to tell you right now is don't worry about how long the resume is. There's lots of ways to now, easier than ever, to make sure that you put your best foot forward if and when you're looking for your next opportunity. Maybe it's promotion, maybe it's with a new company, maybe it's in a new industry, right? Next is build your social presence, and more specifically, I would tell you to build your brand. And sometimes it's hard to know what your personal brand is. It's not as difficult in today's arena as it may have been in the past, with the advent of all the social networks. People tend to talk about their personal brand much more. Sometimes their personal brand, quite frankly, is not very attractive, though, from a corporate perspective. And that's something to be very cognizant of. I know as a hiring manager, the very first thing I do when screening candidates is I'll Google them, right? Go on to the popular social network and search for their name. And anyone can know you in an interview. Anyone can do that. If you prepare well, you can get snowed as a hiring manager. But if you invest a little bit of time in social network, you can at least do your due diligence when you're hiring. And it's important you start building your brand. And we could do a whole video on building your brand, but most importantly, it's going out there and inspecting it for yourself. Look at your own social media. Make sure that there's not something in your Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever that that you wouldn't be proud of 20 years from now, right? Because that kind of stuff really happens. And if there's something there, take it down, right? There's so many ways to put things up temporarily. Maybe you're at a celebration, you take a picture and you post it, and later on you think, oh gosh, I probably shouldn't have done that. There's lots of ways to do that and do it in a very temporary way anyway, and I would encourage you to use those. Again, we can talk about that later on. But you want to start building your brand for professionals. And when I say professionals, I should say professionally. I would start building my brand on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is kind of the way that it gets done anymore. Many programs that do recruiting actually pull information straight from LinkedIn. So ensuring that you've got a pretty well documented LinkedIn is important. Building your brand's more than just updating your resume on LinkedIn, which you definitely should do. Updating your profile, make sure you've got a professional picture. Don't use the picture at the business meeting that you were at where you've got your arm around your buddy or your girlfriend or whatever and cut it out. Actually go have a picture taken, put a suit jacket on, put your work shirt on, whatever it is, and take a picture and use that for your LinkedIn profile. If you can do professional photos, those are always best. But there's lots of tricks of the trade, and you can get on the internet and do a search, and you can find a lot of those tricks out. But building your profile out is important. But also connecting with others in your industry, those that work with you, for you, maybe even. That can get a little tricky. Um, Not on LinkedIn. I always follow my team when I'm on LinkedIn. I think it's the least that I can do to help them build their own brand. But connecting with others, keeping your profile updated, use video. Gary V. I love Gary V. That's a big one that he talks about. He's been talking about for years, but in particular recently with the addition of video on LinkedIn, and that's a great way to get more impressions, let people know what's going on in your life. So last but not least, which is probably the most important, is create a safety net. And there's lots of ways to do this. I think we've all heard that you should save more than you spend. I'm going to tell you, it's critical. I've had some fantastic leaders, and they always took the time to remind me to put away money when I had money, right? And hey, you know what? I was young. I've owned a lot of toys. I've wasted a lot of money on a lot of toys. And but the thing that I've done that's been most important is investing in myself. And you can do that in a lot of ways. If you don't have any money, you know what? You might be in a position where after you get your check, you are struggling to put food on the table, right? That's just real, right? You might be in that position. I'm not talking about after you've you paid your Porsche payment or your brand new Honda Civic with the cool wheels and the awesome exhaust. I mean, being able to put food on the table, right? Because quite frankly, if you're not saving money before you're doing all those other things, you're in a full world of hurt later on in life. You just are. And I encourage you to leave a comment if you disagree with me. Maybe you're 22, 23 years old and you're trying to live your best life. But you can live a fantastic life and not throw money down the toilet. You're going to. I did. But you can, right? You can do that. But if there's just one thing that I would encourage, or that I'd like to say today, if there's one thing that I want to leave everyone with today, is that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And you know, it can be bumpy. Getting the realization that you've just lost your job can be pretty traumatic. It can impact everyone in your life, right? But with a little bit of time and perseverance, you can come out on top. And I'm here to tell you that can happen.